Okay, I am back with another video talking about The Amazing Race. So, a little over a year ago, I did a video talking about teams I would like to see for a potential All-Stars 3 season. Because Amazing Race has had two All-Star seasons before, Season 11 and Season 24, as well as two other seasons where they brought back previous teams but didn't call them All-Star seasons. Seasons 18, which was called Unfinished Business, and Season 31 had half were Amazing Race teams, the other half were teams from Survivor and Big Brother. So I decided to do something a little bit like that, but do some also just kind of just more, not necessarily fan fiction, but just something I would like to talk about with Amazing Race. And that is how I would have changed up the three previous, I guess, All-Star seasons, 11, 18, and 24, if I could have basically picked the teams I would have liked to see and just kind of give my thoughts on the teams they did pick versus teams they didn't pick. So this is just kind of not just something I wanted to talk about because I am a big fan of The Amazing Race, and Season 35 just ended, and we know 36 is coming next year, but it doesn't look like it's going to be an All-Star season. And while I'm still hopeful maybe sometime in the near future we'll get another All-Stars season, All-Stars 3, and hopefully they would include some of the teams I talked about, I wanted to just kind of do this video just talking about those three previous seasons where they brought back teams and just give my thoughts on who I would have liked to have preferred seeing, having basically rewatched every season up to this point in my life. So I basically went into this with two key rules. For 11, 18, and 24, the teams I would like to see come back had to, one, have to come between 6th place and 2nd place, meaning they couldn't have won their season, any season at all, but they also had to at least make 6 to qualify as an all-star. Because there are a few times they brought back teams that placed less than 6, and I feel even if they had a memorable exit, if they didn't make at least 6, I don't think they really deserve to be called an all-star because they didn't even race half the season. My other rule, and I think this is one I mentioned in my previous video, if a team had been together on the race but they had separated, or if they combined two different people that were not originally raced together the first time to a new team the second time, I didn't want to include them, and I'll get into more detail on that as I go. So yeah, this is just basically my version of Amazing Race All-Stars 11, Season 11, Season 18, and Season 24. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first Amazing Race All-Star season was Season 11, which aired in 2007. Now, real quick, before I get into the teams I would like to have seen, I got to give some quick context. So I once read that Phil and the producers had the idea of doing an all-star season since around like season 7 or 8, but they wanted to wait a few more seasons, see if they get a few more memorable and interesting teams first. And then after season 10, they decided, okay, now's the time to do an all-star season. So from what I've read, and most of this information comes from the Amazing Race wiki and links I could find to articles and interviews on the wiki, is Phil and the producers wrote a list of about 20 teams they would like to see come back for all-stars. And 10 of the first 12 teams they contacted said, yes, we would like to come back. The two that said no of the 12 were Colin and Christy from Season 5. They had to say no because Christy was pregnant at the time. But thankfully they did come back for Season 31 and then won that season. And I can understand, obviously, you can't put a pregnant woman racing around the world. The other team they picked they contacted was Flo and Drew from Season 3. Now, I did like Derek and Drew, but I didn't really care for Flo and Zach, mostly for Flo, and probably my top 5 least favorite winner teams, solely for Flo. Now, Flo and Drew had been dating after the season ended, but they decided they didn't want to come back and race again as a new team, so the producers contacted Eric and Danielle instead from Season 9, because Eric and Danielle started dating after their season ended, but they actually had just recently broken up when they got contacted to come on the race. But they said, okay, let's just compete as a couple anyway. And they did, and then ultimately they ended up winning Season 11 All-Stars. Now, I didn't hate them as much as Flo and Zach, but I would have preferred just seeing Eric come back with Jeremy rather than him being with Danielle. But overall, I did enjoy Season 11, but only about half the teams I would have brought back. And also one quick thing I want to say this now, because I don't think I said in my introduction. For Seasons 11, 18, 24, all 3 seasons, I would have 12 teams come back for each one. So these are the 12 teams I would have brought back, and basically talk about the teams that originally were on the season I would not have wanted to come back. So originally for Season 11 All-Stars from 2007, we had Joe and Bill and Kevin and Drew from Season 1, Oswald and Danny from Season 2, Terry and Ian and John, Vito, and Jill from Season 3, Charlotte and Mira from Season 5, Uchenna and Joyce, who actually won Season 7, as well as Rob and Amber from Season 7, Eric and Danielle, like I said, were from 2 separate teams from 9, and then came back as a couple, even though, again, they had broken up right before they got in contact to be on the race. Dustin and Candace and Dave and Mary from Season 10. So those are the 11 teams originally from All Stars Season 11. So here's the 12 teams I would have brought back and why. So from Season 1, I still would have brought back Joe and Bill, but I wouldn't have brought back Derek and Kevin and Drew. I did like Joe and Bill. They were kind of like the first villains of the show, but they weren't my least favorite Season 1 team, at least from the top 6. But I did enjoy them in the season, so I would have brought them back. However, I would not have brought back Kevin and Drew, mainly just because seeing Drew suffer in the first 2 legs of this season was not fun, so I wouldn't have brought them back because of that. Now, I still would have brought back Oswald and Danny from Season 2, and I still would have brought back Terry and Ian from Season 3, because I really did enjoy both teams the first time and the second time they raced. Now, I was upset that no one from Season 4 was contacted to come back for the season, because I think Season 4 gets a little too much hate. I do enjoy the season. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was actually the very first season I watched. I might remember seeing an episode here or there on TV, maybe on reruns as a little kid, but Season 4 is the first season I remember seeing on TV all the way through. So it does kind of have a soft spot for me, because it is the very first season I remember seeing all the way through. And I would have brought back Kelly and John from Season 4, because I really did enjoy them in Season 4. And so I would have brought them back. And I think I said this earlier, one of the teams they brought back also was John, Vito, and Jill from Season 3. They were no longer dating, I wouldn't have brought them back anyway, but Kelly and John were a couple that were engaged. I think they had already gotten married by this point, by the time Season 11 happened, so I would have liked to have seen them come back as like the newlywed couple. Then from Season 5, I still would have brought back Charlotte and Myrna, but I would have also liked to have seen the bowling moms, Linda and Karen, come back. They were a really great team, and I really wanted them to come back, and sadly they didn't. Next, also from another season that sadly didn't have anyone come back, was Season 6. Now, I will say this, Season 6 is one of my least favorite seasons, not because it's a bad season, but I do not like most of the teams who are in the top 6 from this season. Really, the only team from the top 6 I really liked was Chris and John, who were the runner-ups from Season 6. So I would have liked to have seen them come back, because I didn't really care for either of the other 2 teams in the final 3 from Season 6, but I would have liked to have seen Chris and John come back, take a spot in the All-Stars, because I feel like they deserved it. Then, from Season 7, I once again would have brought back Rob and Amber. Now, I think part of the reason maybe why Kelly and John weren't brought back, because Rob and Amber were the newlyweds from that season. But no reason why you can't have 2 newlywed couples, in my opinion. So yeah, I would have brought back Rob and Amber again. But the other team I also would have brought back would have been Meredith and Gretchen. Not a lot of older teams since before All-Stars 1, or even since All-Star 1s, have really been in the top 6 on The Amazing Race. And Meredith and Gretchen were one of the best older teams that have ever been on the race. Really came down picking between them and, I forgot the name already, from Season 9, I can't remember now, there was another older couple from Season 9 I would have, Fran and Barry. But ultimately I liked Meredith and Gretchen more than Fran and Barry, so I would have picked them to be on the All-Stars from this season as well. Then, like I said a minute earlier, instead of having Eric be with Danielle, I would have had him be with Jeremy, because they're a really strong team in Season 9, and one of my personal favorite runner-ups from this first era of the race. So I would definitely like to see the 2 of them work together on Season 9. Now, I think part of the reason why they weren't brought back together, Eric with Jeremy, was because probably they would have been too dominant, because they were one of the most dominant finalist teams up to this point in the rate of the show. So I can kind of see maybe that's part of the reason why they didn't bring him with Jeremy, but I would have preferred Eric with Jeremy. And then finally I would have brought back both Dustin and Candace and David and Mary from Season 10. Really liked both teams on Season 10. So yeah, that basically wouldn't have changed there. So yeah, basically of the original 11 teams from All-Stars 1, I would have brought back 7 and just replaced basically the 4 that were on originally with 5 different teams. And like I said, because I don't think I mentioned them earlier, Uchenna and Joyce, I would not have brought back any teams. And I don't remember who it was. Again, I think it was back in that list I saw. There was 1, possibly 2 more previously winning teams that were considered, but they never got contacted about the race. until the All-Stars after it happened. I don't remember which team it was, but I know there was at least one other winning team that was considered for All-Stars 1. And I just think it was just a weird decision to have just one winning team come back. So I would have had no returning winning teams. That was part of the reason why I had that in my rule in the introduction. So yeah, those are the 12 teams I would have had for my version of Season 11 All-Stars 1. Joe and Bill, Oswald and Danny, Tara and Ian, Kelly and John, Charlie and Mira, Lynn and Karen, Chris and John, Rob and Amber, Meredith and Gretchen, Eric and Jeremy, Dustin and Candace, and David and Mary. Now, it's hard to say, and this will probably apply to the other two seasons as well, how much the show would have been different. Now, obviously, I would not have had the same winning team, but how many teams that were eliminated early would have made it farther, and how many of these teams I would have brought back would have actually been eliminated early? We don't know for sure. This is just the teams I would have preferred to come back, given the roster teams we had up to this point. So yeah, that's how I would have done All-Stars 1. So now let's get into unfinished business. Okay, so now Season 18, unfinished business from 2011. I might have mentioned this in one of my two other videos. I talked about The Amazing Race. Of the 4 returning team seasons, Season 18 is my favorite of the 4, because for the most part, I liked pretty much every team that was in this season. The only 2 teams I would not have brought back, and I just want to go ahead and say this now, is Amanda and Chris and Zev and Justin. Now, I want to also clarify this. Zev and Justin were my favorite team in unfinished business, but if I have to stick with the 2 rules I set up, where it has to be no winning teams, they had to be from 6th to 2nd, and they had to have been on the race together the first time to come back the second time. Sadly, Zev and Justin wouldn't have come back for this, and I'm going to be consistent with that rule, because they got eliminated by losing their passport. The only other team, like I said, from the original Season 18 I would have brought back would have been Amanda and Chris. Now, they were still together, but they only lasted 4 legs the first time, and then were the first team eliminated with only 2 legs the second time. So they hold the record of reaching the least amount of legs of any returning team in Amazing Race history. So yeah. So from this second era, which I think I said in another one, I think it was in my first limited team season, would have been returning teams from seasons 12 to 17. So most of the teams that were originally on unfinished business, I would have brought back. So Ron and Christina and Ken and Vixen from season 12, I still would have brought them back. I really did like both teams. Now, I do know Ken and Vixen did break up sometime after season 18, but they were still dating at the time of season 18, obviously, so I would have kept both teams. Now, I would have added a team from season 13, because this is something that always bothered me. In my opinion, season 13 is probably the most underrated season. I really liked season 13. It's also one of the few seasons where, I'd say out of 35 seasons up to this point, only about 10 had a final 3 where I would have been happy regardless of which team won. Now, there are also some seasons where I would have preferred the 4th place team be in the top 3 instead of one of the other teams that were in the top 3. But like I said, I honestly really liked all 3 teams from season 13. And I feel it's wrong that season 13 was the only team not represented from unfinished business, so I would have brought back from season 13 Andrew and Dan. They were the fraternity brothers who got almost eliminated like half the legs, but they managed to stick it out to the end. I really liked those guys, and I would have liked to have seen them come back for unfinished business. So that would have basically been my first major change. Now, season 14 had a lot of teams come back. I think 5 of the teams from this season originally were from season 14. And the only one I would not have included would have been Amanda and Chris. Everybody else, Jamie and Cara, Margie and Luke, Keisha and Jen, Mel and Mike, I still would have brought them all back. Now, Mel and Mike were the second team eliminated this season, but I really did like them on season 14. And I did enjoy them the first 2 legs. It's just kind of unfortunate the way they got eliminated in the 3rd leg. But I still would have brought back all 4 teams from season 14. Well, like I said, and I wouldn't have brought back Amanda and Chris. Now, season 15, like I said, I wouldn't have brought back Zev and Justin, but I still would have brought back Flight Time and Big Easy. But I would have switched out Zev and Justin with Gary and Dave, who were the father and son team from season 15. Another team I really liked on that season. They came in, I think it was 5th place, and they did really well. And I was upset that they didn't get a chance to come back. So I would have, like I said, switched out Zev and Justin with Gary and Dave. Season 16, in my opinion, is kind of a forgettable season. Because I think I may have said this with the All-Stars 3 video. Kind of like with Floyd and Becca from season 29. They're like the only team from season 29 I actually really remember by name. So they would have been the only team from season 16 I still would have brought back. there are, again, rewatching season 16, it does have its moments, but Jet and Cord are the only team I can really say I really liked, so they were the only team that still would have come back. But then from season 17, I once again would have brought back Gary and Mallory, but I would have added my 12th team for this season, my version of Unfinished Business. It would have been Nick and Vicky. Another team I really liked overall throughout season 17. Sadly, they just had a bit of bad luck the last couple of legs they were on, and then came in 4th, just one leg shy, making it to the end. And I would have preferred them making it to the final 3 over another team that made it to the final 3 that season. But yeah, so I would have, those basically, so yeah, for the most part, season 18 Unfinished Business would have contained most of the same cast. I just would have added a couple of new teams instead of, or added 3 teams instead of 2 of the teams they had originally. So my version would have still been Ron and Christina and Ken and Vixen, but added Andrew and Dan from 13. Most of 14 stays the same: Jamie and Cara, Margie and Luke, Keisha and Jen and Mel and Mike. Fly Time, Big Easy, and Gary and Dave from 15 instead of Zev and Justin. Then Jet and Cord from 16, and then Nick and Vicky and Gary Mallory from 17. So again, those are the teams I would have preferred come back from the previous 5 seasons for this one. So yeah, that's how I would have changed Unfinished Business. Now, I still think it is, now one last thing, I still think it's kind of weird they call it Unfinished Business instead of All-Stars 2, but that's where season 24 comes in as the official All-Stars 2. So that's the 3rd season I'm going to talk about on how I would have changed it up. Alright, so the 3rd returning team season, which was technically Amazing Race All-Stars 2, was season 24 from 2014. And like a lot of people who watch this season, there are a few teams that are questionable, to say the least, in the reason why they came back as All-Stars. And now I will say, I do like season 24. The first half is a little rough, but I do think the second half is enjoyable. But there are a few teams I would not have brought back, and even before talking about the teams I would have added in instead, or changed up instead with this list. So, Margie and Luke from season 14 came back, obviously, in season 18 Unfinished Business, but they didn't even make the top 6 that season, so I would not have brought them back for All-Stars 2. And then Mark and Mallory were a team, well, Mallory was originally from 17 and 18, and then Mark was originally on season 20 with his partner Bopper, but Bopper could not compete because of health issues, so they combined the 2 of them together, Mark with Mallory. I would not have brought back them as a team. I'm surprised I guess they couldn't get a replacement team in, so they just got Mallory to replace Bopper, but I wouldn't have brought them back. And then Dave and Connor and Jessica and John from season 22. Again, neither of them made the top 6. And I think they were just brought back because they had memorable exits. But just because you had a memorable exit from the show doesn't necessarily make you an all-star. So it would have made more sense if it had been another like Unfinished Business. But again, I wouldn't have brought them back for coming in 6th place. Or below 6th place. And the only other team from the season I wouldn't have brought back, not because they did bad, but just because I wasn't a fan of them, was Joey and Megan. I rewatched season 22, didn't really care too much for Joey and Megan. They were an okay team, but they weren't my favorite team from that season, so I would have probably picked someone to replace them instead. But about the other half of the teams from the season I still would have brought back. So Flight Time and Big Easy and Jet and Cord, again, originally from seasons 15 and 16, and then came back for Unfinished Business. Both of them still made the top 6, so I would have brought them back again. But this probably would have been the last time they would have raced, because neither team has returned since then. So those would have been the only 2 teams from before season 24 that would have come back. The other 10 teams would have been before season 18, I would have brought back. But the other 10 teams would have been from after season 18. So the first team I would have brought back would have been Bill and Kathy from season 19. Again, another older team that actually did pretty well their season. But I was upset that season 19 basically got skipped over for this season. Now, I did read that there was 1 or 2 teams that they did producers and Phil contacted for All-Stars 2. But like with All-Stars 1, there were a few teams that had to say no. And there was a team from 19 originally was contacted that said no. So I would have replaced them with Bill and Kathy. Then from season 20, I know a lot of people hate them, but I actually enjoyed Brenda and Rachel this season, so I would have still brought them back. And I would have also brought back Art and JJ. Now, I do know they did come back for 31, and sadly they were the first team eliminated in 31, but I still wish they would have made it back for All-Stars 2, so I would have brought them back instead of having Mark and Bopper, because again, Mark and Bopper weren't going to make it anyway, because Bopper had to leave, or couldn't race because of his health condition. So having Brendan and Rachel with Art and JJ again would have been pretty cool to see the two of them. And then from season 21, I still would have brought back Natalie and Nadia. I was upset that they were the first team eliminated this season because I did really enjoy them in season 21. But I also would have included two other teams from 21. I would have included Trey and Lexi, who were finalists from that season, as well as James and Abba. Now, James and Abba were a team that actually did fairly well the first half of the season 21, but then one of them, I forgot which one it was, sadly lost his passport, and they had to be eliminated from the race. Now, unlike, say, Sev and Justin from season 15 who lost their passport, at least James and Abba were in the top 6 teams. So I would have brought them back as an all-star to give them a second chance. Then from season 22, like I said, I would not have brought back Dave and Connor, Jessica and John, but I still would have liked to have seen another team besides Caroline and Jennifer compete. So I still would have brought back Caroline and Jennifer, but I would have also brought back Mona and Beth, the roller derby moms who came back, or who were on season 22 with Caroline and Jennifer. They actually made it to the finals, and I would have liked to have seen them come back. And then finally, from season 23, I still would have brought back Leo and Jamal, one of my personal favorite teams of all time. And I would have also, though, to take the 12th spot from this season, Allie and Ashley, also from season 23. Because Leo and Jamal and Allie and Ashley had a great kind of romantic, not necessarily rivalry, but kind of between the two teams. And that I think they called them the race wives and race husbands, each other's team that. So it would have been cool to see both teams come back. So Leo and Jamal with Allie and Ashley would have been fun to see. So that's how I would have done season 24 All-Stars 2 from 2014. Flytime, Big Easy, and Jed and Cord, again, the only two teams from before season 18, and the 10 teams from after season 18. Bill and Kathy from season 19, Art and JJ and Brendan and Rachel from season 20, Trey and Lexi, Natalie and Nadia, and James and Abba from season 21, Mona and Beth and Caroline and Jennifer from 22, and Leo and Jamal and Allie and Ashley from season 23. So that's the 12 teams I would have brought back for that All-Star season. And then, like I said, I wouldn't really have changed up season 31. Overall, I really enjoyed that season, as was having half Amazing Race teams, half Survivor Big Brother teams. And I'm still hopeful someday we'll get a third All-Star season. Hopefully in the next few years, before some of the earlier teams I talked about in my All-Stars 3 video might be too old to race again. So, but yeah, that's the end of this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And hopefully I'll get you one last good video before the end of this year. And hopefully I'll be a little bit more active in the next year, in 2024. So yep, that's all I got to say. Have a good day and have a happy holidays. All right, take care.